Thank you for joining me. Jocelyn Anderson here. I don't know if you've heard, Kendrick's brothers are releasing a new movie. May already be released at this point. The Kendrick brothers, for those of you who do not know, are radical patriarchals. They are fundamentalist complementarians, and they are releasing a brand new movie entitled The Forge that emphasizes the importance of men, fathers, and male mentors. Now, they're going to do this in the movie at the expense of women and mothers. And I don't simply imagine that this will be the case. They boldly state it through the mouths of characters and even included it in the movie trailer. We'll talk about that later on in this video. Now, having done that, can you imagine what else will be sandwiched between a lot of what will likely be really good stuff? Their movies are usually wonderfully entertaining and often have a lot of really good stuff in there. But having said that, I predict that like the rest of their movies, The Forge is going to be a smash hit. A lot of people will be seeing it. So the good part of their message is going to be widely scattered, and so will the bad part of their message. And trust me, there is a downside to this, and we're going to talk about this in this podcast. Now, like all of their movies, like I said, it will be hugely entertaining. I don't expect anything less. It will be inspiring. It will be an emotionally moving film with breathtaking scenes, great acting, and some genuinely good and much needed messages. The Kendrick brothers are truly amazing talents. Sadly, they use this talent and their boundless passion, along with vast financial resources from complementarian coffers, to shove their message of male governance, male supremacy, and male bestedness. Yes, I think I just created that word, but they use all of their talents and all of their resources to shove their message down the throats of a largely unsuspecting viewing public. I'm going to talk about their movie here in a moment, but I want to say a few other things first. You know, movie watching is a passive activity. We do it for enjoyment. We watch movies largely to relax and to be entertained, and do not generally connect relaxation activity with attitudes of active analysis or critical thinking. So the film platform is a natural for activists to promote ideas and to set up unsuspecting movie audiences to passively and unconsciously even absorb their opinions and beliefs. Now, this isn't a bad thing. Movies and film is used for good and bad things, but we're not as critical and we're not as actively thinking as we're watching movies as we are when we read. So, people who watch the movie The Forge without understanding the creator's goal of promoting male domination, and that is the goal of the Kendricks brothers. So, people watching The Forge without understanding that goal will passively absorb what I call the rat poison of complementarian patriarchal paradigm. Do you know that rat poison is 98 to 99% good stuff? Oddly enough, since I'm using this example, I learned this from a complementarian. That's why rats love rat poison so much. It is 98 to 99% good stuff, but it is that minuscule amount of the 1 to 2% of bad stuff that kills the rats. Now, complementarian movies are generally loaded with much more than 1 to 2% of the bad stuff, which is propaganda misinformation. With the exception of the movie Facing the Giants, which I love that movie, Facing the Giants. It will always be one of my all-time favorite movies. I've watched it several times. I will watch it several times again. I recommend it to people to watch it, even though it does have some portrayals of what is called so-called soft complementarianism. But aside from Facing the Giants, every movie that I know of that the Kendrick brothers have produced has progressively become increasingly more radical and hardcore patriarchal. They're becoming bolder and bolder and more aggressive in their message with each movie. So I invite my listeners on this podcast to do something before watching the movie The Forge, if that's what you plan to do. Before watching The Forge or any other Kendrick brother movie, of which there are several, I invite you to read my review of their blockbuster film, Courageous. I will put the link in the description section below this video. My review of their blockbuster film, Courageous, is a must read for advocates of gender equality or anyone else interested in the propaganda contained in it and in most all of the Kendrick brother movies. And the propaganda is overt, sometimes it's covert, sometimes it is practically subliminal, but it's there in all of their movies. And this is what the vast majority of the Christian community is being force-fed by the Kendrick brothers, whose overarching message is the importance of men, the importance of male governance in the home and in the church. And at the same time, the importance of men is being contrasted in myriads of ways throughout their films with the dispensability and the general ineffectiveness of women outside of their relationships to men and duties in the home. Men are only portrayed, I'm sorry, women in Kendrick movies, I will tell you, are one-dimensional, and they are only portrayed in relationship to their, as they are connected to the men in their lives, wife, mother, sister, daughter. So I invite you to read my review and tell me if I exaggerate in this, but I can tell you I'm not. Now, without disparaging single parents, of which there are many, I can say with confidence that God gave children two parents for a reason, mothers and fathers, who are equal in importance to those children. This is God's perfect design for raising children. But the Kendrick brothers in their movies not only ignore this fact, the fact that both parents are equal in importance, but they actually deny it. Although I am positive there will be loads of good stuff in what promises to be an emotional and highly entertaining and inspiring Christian film. In the end, the men and women who drink the Kool-Aid of complementarianism will be doing their families no favors. Now, graphic evidence of this is seen in the 2018 movie, The 1517 to Paris, which I recommend everyone to watch. It is an amazing movie. It is the true story of three American heroes who were honored in France for their heroism. One of these heroes was a devout Christian raised by a single mother. That is, he was raised by a single mother until his complementarian church and church school leaders called social services and gave a bad report about a good mother. for the unthinkable reason that their complementarian theology convinced them that the boy had behavioral issues simply due to being raised by a single mother. Let that sink in. It was the influence of the church school depositions that convinced the family court to remove an adolescent boy who wasn't really a bad boy. Against his will from a loving mother's home. The church, the pastor of the church had to be involved in this because the church school wasn't going to do something like that without involving all the church leaders. So it was the church and the church school depositions that convinced the family court to remove an adolescent boy against his will from the home of a loving mother. Now keep listening, because this is not Hollywood anti-Christian or artistic license portrayed in this movie, the 1517 to Paris. It is affirmed that the boy had a good mother who was never found by the courts to be unfit. And throughout the proceedings, no one ever tried to claim that she was, not even the non-custodial father, who ended up suing for custody after the school called him and told him he should do that. Let that sink in for a moment. Until the complementarian church school, this is very important, until the complementarian church school decided to meddle in the life of this family, the boy's father was not pursuing custody of his son. But the father was unilaterally contacted by the school, who planted the complementarian idea in his head that a single mother is deficient for no other reason than that she's unmarried. And if a boy must be raised by a single parent, then it should be the father. That was it. This was all done without alerting the unsuspecting mother, I should say, that the church school that she was paying for her son to attend was conspiring with her ex-husband for theological reasons to take her child from her. Now, the movie, the 1517 to Paris, is not about this particular topic. It just happens to be part of the life of this boy, which they portrayed, this boy who became a hero. The complementarian church and its church school's heartless interference was the overriding reason that an adolescent boy, against his will, was torn from the arms of a good, loving, and fit mother. The cruel interference for religious reasons with this family was the overriding reason that a good mother had her child taken from her in a court case that should never have happened. Her child, a man now, attested to this when he approved those graphic and gut-wrenching scenes in the movie, The 1517 to Paris. Watch it. I'll link to that. It's actually linked to in my article on Substack. So I'm going to link the article to Substack. You can read the article that is the basis for this podcast. And that movie is linked in that article. And subscribe to my Substack column if you haven't already. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. And please like this video. It helps get the word out to others. So I do recommend watching that movie, The 1517 to Paris. which without this movie that I'm talking about, the 1517 to Paris, it is linked. What I'm saying about this movie is linked to the movie The Forge. So stick with me, okay? The 1517 to Paris was made without the producers even knowing what complementarianism is, but it vividly portrays its cold heart and the awful damage inflicted by it. And afterwards, while if you watch the 15 to 17 to Paris and then you decide to watch Kendrick Brothers movies, including the Forge, remember what you saw in the 15 to 17 to Paris. Trust me, you'll see it. You'll make the connection. Now, it is telling that in the 15 to 17 to Paris, when this young man received the French equivalent of the American Medal of Honor for his bravery and heroism, it was his mother who was there as her son was being honored. As a consultant in the movie, the son, so cruelly snatched from his mother's arms as an adolescent, had a say in how his ceremony was portrayed in the movie. And he made sure his mother was prominently featured in that scene. It cannot be emphasized enough that this woman's loving and heroic son, a man's man by any definition of the word, approved both the agonizing scenes depicting the callousness of complementarian church leaders towards single mothers and their children. This was emphasized strongly in traumatic scenes of complementarian, church instigated, and court ordered separation of mother from child and vice versa. Now, this amazing young man not only starred in this movie, he starred as himself, but he also acted as a consultant to the producers and he approved the content of the movie. That's why I say that this is not Hollywood fictionalized account. The 1517 to Paris, which showed the world exactly how the complementarian church and their associated church school viewed and treated single mothers to their sons, was made with the approval of the people who starred in it, that put their stamp of approval on the facts being true. Now, his mother lived to regret thinking highly enough of that church school to send her son to it. And by the way, she worked 2 jobs to be able to afford to send him there. That fact was used against her in court. Can you believe that? The school that was being paid to educate her son used the fact that she had to work 2 jobs to be able to afford to pay them in helping have her son removed from her home because they thought that a mother is not fit to raise a son. Now, the movie made it clear that it was the complementarian church school which initially reported that good mother, who then testified or gave deposition against her, favoring the father to the court. The movie was not anti-Christian. I watched it. It was not anti-Christian, nor even anti-church school. It simply portrayed the story as the real life people in it wanted the world to see how the events of their lives unfolded. Now, after watching the movie, I went to the trouble to research this church and church school. It is actually named in the movie. Its name and location is actually named in the movie. I was surprised that it was not considered to be a fundamentalist church. It was, and actually probably still is, part of a large denomination that affords women a great deal of freedom in the ministry. It ordains women to preach and to pastor, but sadly still pushes male governance and female submission, gender role religion at home. Now, as of 2018, when the movie was released, it was still an active church fellowship with the same pastor and the same church school as portrayed in the film. There is no doubt as to its complementarian theology. It was not only shown in the movie, but its website at that time in 2018 featured men's and women's groups that were dedicated to teaching and reinforcing gender roles. They had a YouTube channel. I watched their Mother's Day and Father's Day videos, which they created and posted to their YouTube channel. They have subsequently removed those, by the way. I believe they've removed the entire YouTube channel or made another one. I'm not real sure, but I know that as of a few years ago, things changed. But in these videos, their Mother's Day videos revolved around mothers being praised for baking cookies, and Father's Day videos revolved around fathers being praised for being heroes to their families. I do not exaggerate. The message touted in Kendrick brother movies is the same. Now, as I said, I feel certain that lots of good stuff will be in the movie The Forge. There will be poignant scenes where inspiration is truly deserved. And there will be complementarian scenes full of propaganda, disinformation, where hearts and emotions will be played like fiddles. People will watch and recommend the movie. Complementarian churches will hold movie nights that feature The Forge. The film will be advertised by word of mouth in church bulletins, on church websites, and on thousands of complementarian blogs. It's already launched a massive advertising campaign on virtually all of the streaming platforms and apps. The Forge promotes the good, the very good, and very much needed message that fathers need to be more involved with their families, and male mentorship for boys without fathers is a good thing. It promotes the message that men and boys should commit their lives to Christ, and that is a good thing. I brook no argument there. These are good things. But I warn you, these good messages in The Forge will be laced with both overt and covert propaganda, complementarian propaganda, rat poison, and I guarantee more than 1% to 2%. I would never tell anyone not to watch a film. I will likely watch it myself, but I do advise to watch it with eyes wide open. Be prepared to be moved and inspired. I fully expect there to be plenty in the film to applaud. But here are some other not so praiseworthy things that you will see and hear in that movie. You will be given disinformation, propaganda, shown in the most unarguable terms, almost, that mothers, no matter how good they are or how hard they try, are just not capable of raising good boys to adulthood, or raising boys into manly men. Now, I've got a lot to say about that, but we're going to leave it alone. I won't even comment on this video. I've probably made videos about it and written other things about it. However, you will hear this concept from the mouths of female characters in the movie. You'll actually hear it in the trailer for the movie. You will see and hear gender roles being taught and reinforced in many different ways and scenes. You will watch the importance of fathers being touted and portrayed as being the most important influence in a boy's life, while being contrasted with single mothers who will be portrayed as subpar, no matter if they be good people or how good their intentions are or how hard they try to be a good parent. Now, I want to quote from the movie trailer. This is being spoken by a female character, I believe, from the mother in the movie, where she's with a group of people and she says, no matter what I do, it's hard for a woman to call out the man in the sun. Now, this statement, meant to elevate the influence of men over women, comes from a patently false premise. Disinformation and propaganda that fathers are meant to call out, quote, the man in their sons, or that mothers are meant to call out, quote, the woman in their daughters. Seriously, who comes up with this stuff? The Bible certainly does not teach it. I challenge you, search. You show me a verse or a passage that teaches such a thing or a concept. It's not there. Fathers are not called to bring out the, quote, man in their sons. Mothers are not called to bring out the, quote, woman in their daughters. What the Bible does teach is that if we simply acknowledge our Creator in all of our ways, then He will direct our paths. Parents, both mothers and fathers, are commanded to live godly lives and to teach their children how to do the same. Those who do this are promised blessings on them and on their children. These blessings are without gender qualification or restriction. I know a woman who was supernaturally protected by the righteousness of her mother. I know this firsthand. You can read about it in the article on my Substack, which I will link in the description below this video. In her case, her father was ineffective, but that doesn't mean that her mother was God's second choice. Mom was definitely God's first choice. You know, the Bible says that God's plans for good were made before the foundation of the earth. Our beloved 10 Commandments honor both parents equally, but complementarians do not. So if you decide to watch The Forge, be prepared to be thoroughly entertained and by all means enjoy the good stuff. But please do not let that influence you to disregard the bad stuff, the complementarian rat poison that will certainly be laced and layered throughout the film. Complementarian rat poison propaganda will be made palatable to the unsuspecting viewing audience through seasoning it with humor, heart, and faith-based, quote, family content. This is what the Kendrick brothers are known for. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. Help spread the word. Share this video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you watch The Forge and recognize the things that I talk about in this podcast, maybe you'll see them for the first time because you watched this or listened to this podcast. Write a review of your own and post it to your website or social media. But whatever you do, do not sit in silence and say nothing about this unscriptural and very harmful doctrine of complementarianism.